I am here with Dean Baker, the Chief Economist at the Center for Economic and Policy Research, and he is the author with Jared Bernstein of a new book, Getting Back to Full Employment. And my first question to you, Dean, is why are we even having a conversation about the need to get back to full employment? Why aren't we talking about full employment right now?
Well, it's unfortunate. People have become obsessed with other issues, most importantly the budget deficit, and what we're trying to do is refocus people's attention on how important full employment is. I mean, it seems to be getting to be a distant memory, but back in 2000, we got the unemployment rate down to 4%, and that wasn't important just for people having jobs. It was important for improving the strength of the labor market. So what was true at the end of the 90s during that boom period where we had low unemployment was that people up and down the income ladder were seeing real wage gains, that people were getting their share of economic growth. So it's very important for people to have jobs, no doubt about it, but it's also important that because you get a tighter labor market, even those at the bottom end of the wage ladder are able to see substantial wage gains. So we think people have to be talking about this, and we think this is really the most important economic issue facing the country.
So how specifically does your book propose we move the debate?
Well, there are a number of different routes to increasing employment. I mean, one of the things that we just think is unfortunate is this obsession with the budget deficit, because it actually goes the other way. I mean, what happens is when you cut spending, that throws people out of work. And, I understand people get worried. We all know in our family budgets we can't spend more than we make, or we certainly can't do that every month. But, again, the federal government literally can, and it's really its responsibility. When the private sector is not spending money, it's the federal government's responsibility to pick up the gap. So that's a big part of the story. The other things we call attention on trade deficit, that's a lot of demand that's going elsewhere. That's, currently $500 billion a year creating jobs in other countries rather than creating jobs in the United States. That's something we should be paying attention to. The other point we make in there is that one way to get people employed is to go the German route. People talk about Germany's economy doing very well. Their economy's actually grown no more than the U.S. economy, but they started this downturn 7.8% unemployment. Today it's 5.2%. It wasn't the growth. What they did is they get employers to keep people on the payroll, even if it means working fewer hours. And we think that's a much, much better way to go, that if we got firms, rather than laying off workers, they reduced work hours, and in effect, people take some cut in pay, but they work many fewer hours. That would be a better route to go. So what we're trying to do is say, look, we've got to focus on this front and center. There's different ways to address the problem. Clearly, the government's got a big role in terms of spending more money, but we also should be looking at the trade deficit and see what we could do to go along the German path of reducing work hours.
Do you talk in your book about the Humphrey Hawkins full employment bill?
It's a good question. We probably make a reference to it, as I recall, and unfortunately, and I'll take some blame here. That's gotten so far off the agenda, and that really is unfortunate. For people who don't know, that says we should be shooting for 4% unemployment, and really sets it as a target for the government. And that just has been, really disappeared from the agenda. But that really should be, front and center. And again, I have to say I can't remember whether we make reference to it, but that certainly is a good way to frame the debate.
If you had an opportunity to talk to President Obama, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, and perhaps the leadership in the House, what would be your 30-second message to them?
Well, I would say that they really have to make job creation a top priority, and the country's paying an enormous price. It's both short-term and long-term. I mean, short-term, we just have work that could be done. We could be retrofitting our houses to make them more energy efficient. We could be educating our kids' childcare. No shortage of things that could be done in the short run. And many of these would have long-term benefits. But the other point is that when we have people unemployed for long periods of time, many of these people will never work again. What happens is someone's unemployed for 2, 3, 4 years, they lose touch with the labor market. It's very difficult for that person to get back to work. What that means is, people talk about short-term pain for long-term gain. What we're seeing is short-term pain for long-term pain, and that's a bad deal.
You're going to be at Busboys and Poets at 5th and K Street Northwest, I hope, with Jared Bernstein, who's your co-author. So we look forward to hearing what you have to say there.
Thanks. We'll be there next Monday.